Welcome back to JKP Rising. Back in February, I made a video talking about what would happen after Dead Space 3 Awakening, and I did mention that in that video, and if I didn't, well, I'm mentioning now. I wanted to do a separate video talking about all the comments that you guys built up over the past couple months on that video, and in this video, we're going to talk about what Dead Space could be like after Dead Space Awakening by you guys, the fans. All the suggestions that you have left on that video, I'm going to take a lot of them, and I'm going to read about them. We're going to discuss about them in this video. Feel free to talk about more of them in the comments below of this video if you want. Let's build a discussion for Dead Space 4, what could happen after Dead Space 3 Awakening. And before we get to the video, I wanted to apologize really quick for the lack of Dead Space videos on JKP Rising, only because this channel also covers 4 other series, Deus Ex, Metroid, Halo, and BioShock. I want to give those series the spotlight as I have been giving Dead Space a lot of spotlight. I will continue and I will remain to do Dead Space content on JKP Rising. The reason why the Dead Space videos get a lot of attention, not only is it because I'm like one of the only people on YouTube that actively covers Dead Space now, but it's because I kept spamming people with my Dead Space content. So the goal for the other 4 series is to kind of do the same effect and get them as much attention as Dead Space is right now. So I will not forget about Dead Space. You guys mean a lot to me. You're the reason why I'm here. You're mainly the reason why my sub count keeps going up. So I appreciate every single one of you fans that come to my videos and watch them. I will not forget about you guys. I have not, and I will continue to make Dead Space videos, just letting everyone know about what's been going on. So back to this video, the question I asked all of you people back in the last video that was in February after I made my video about what happens after Awakening. The question was, if you liked the Dead Space Awakening DLC, how do you think the story would continue after where Awakening left off? Or if you did not like the Awakening DLC, you can retcon that DLC as in it never happened, and what happens after Dead Space 3, because a lot of people are kind of going back and forth if Awakening is canon or not. I think Awakening is canon, since like half of the DLC is like a hallucination. The whole DLC itself could have been a hallucination. These comments that I'm going to read are in no particular order. Some of them will be supporting Awakening is canon, and some of them won't be. With that said, let's get into your comments. I don't think that Awakening didn't happen, but it's hard to believe that Isaac and Carver wake up after their battle with the moon practically unscathed. I feel like Awakening was more or so a vision of what's to come for the franchise, but possibly not for Isaac or Carver. I'm convinced that they actually did die after the battle with the moon. I feel there's a very good possibility for a change of protagonist in the form of going back to the roots of a single-player campaign. That's definitely possible. I do believe Dead Space 4 has a high chance for a new protagonist. However, I don't think Isaac and Carver are out of the woods just yet. At least not Isaac. I think he needs a proper conclusion as like an actual conclusion, because Dead Space 3 never really ended with a solid conclusion because Awakening has those moons at Earth. They clearly left the series off on a cliffhanger. Regardless if Awakening was real or not, they left the series off on an intentional cliffhanger, so their story is not over. So I don't think Isaac and Carver are dead just yet. Not to mention, at the very end of Dead Space 3, if we're making Awakening not canon, Isaac did say Ellie's name twice, implying that Isaac's not dead and his story still has some more story to be told. The markers can cause mass hysteria, hallucinations, reanimate dead corpses, so why can't the electromagnetic powers of the Earth system's markers produce visions for some of the inhabitants of Earth? One of the people who receive the visions decide to warn the Earth of the impending moons or attempts to find a way to destroy the moons. I believe that there will be a crossing of paths with Ellie eventually through the new protagonist. Very possible. By the way, thank you for everything you are doing in regards to trying to bring the popularity of the Dead Space franchise. Thank you. Thank you. Please continue to support this awesome video game series. I definitely will. I will not stop until Dead Space 4 is real, and even when Dead Space 4 does come out, I'll continue to keep making Dead Space videos, so by all means, I will not stop. Maybe they could have done a DLC of a story related to the Sovereign colonies instead of Isaac and Carver coming back from the dead. I still like to see Isaac come back one more time, even if there's a new protagonist, like Javer or Clementine in The Walking Dead: A New Frontier. I would love to see Isaac alive as well. I just want that guy to be happy. He has gone through so much shit. If he is alive, I just want him and Ellie to live happily ever after. That's all I want. I know how you feel. Give the guy and the others like Carver and Ellie a break, will ya? Sadly, that is not how tragedies operate. When it comes to storytelling like this, usually there's never happy endings, so Isaac, we love you, but I'm really sorry you're going through some shit right now. Jacob Rising, I never played the DLC, so having it where Carver and Clarke die in Dead Space 3 would work out in Dead Space 4, and have it where you play as another engineer on Earth where the markers get to Earth. I think Isaac and Carver were just seeing the moons, and when they go back to Earth, they try to find a way to destroy them without taking out Earth along with them. That could be interesting. Maybe it's just a few hours early before Isaac and Carver come to Earth in the Terra Nova. Maybe all the moons join together and form a giant planet. And if there are 4 characters, Isaac, Carver, Ellie, and a new character. There's been a lot of talk about a new character to play as in Dead Space 4 other than Isaac and Carver. Some people have suggested Ellie could be it. Some people have suggested that Lexine from the Dead Space 2 Sever DLC could be it. So who do you guys think in the comments below could be it if it's not one of those 2 characters already? Let me know in the comments. Here's my thought. 1. In the prologue, we could be playing as that girl that was the protagonist on the Dead Space 2 mobile game. The creators said they would use her for another game. Interesting. 2. The first half of the game would take place on that moon that appeared in front of them in the ending of Awakening, in which they would have crashed on, and then they would have to find a way to go down to Earth, and then they would fight some giant monster as a half-game boss, like the Biomass from Dead Space 1, and the Nexus from Dead Space 3. 3. The final boss would be like the Creator or something, since the Brother Moons need a black marker to be created. Someone obviously had to create the markers in the first place, and that's why they referred to Earth as home, because the Creator would be on Earth. Kind of like how the Ark was in Halo 3, and that led them to the home of the Halo rings. Thing that appeared in my mind for some reason, what if the Earth moon is actually some kind of brother moon? So the first point about the girl in the mobile game, I'm going to look into that because I actually never heard of that before, so I'll have more information about that maybe in a separate video. The second point is, I don't know if they could actually land on a brother and moon, if it even would let them land on the brother moon unless it wants to like eat them or something. So I don't know how like half of a game could be set on a brother and moon. I do like the third point because there must have been someone who created the markers in the first place, so maybe if you fought the origin of where it all began, that would be pretty interesting as well. In terms of the moon of Earth being a brother and moon, I don't know, because if it was, wouldn't it have attacked Earth already? I personally think they should play it safe and just reboot the story with a new character and go back to the roots of Dead Space to get some good cash, then maybe play around with the Isaac storyline. That could be a good idea. Get Dead Space more known again, and then maybe when they have a bigger audience, they could go back and finish the Isaac storyline. I could see that happening. I think they should make a Dead Space that takes place at the same time of Dead Space 3, like Halo 3 and Halo 3 ODST. Although Halo 3 ODST did not take place at the same time as Halo 3, but I know what you mean. And get to know the character, then add the character to 4 and have the ability to change between 4 characters: Isaac Clarke, John Carver, Ellie Lanford, and the new character. I do like the idea of having a game take place during the same time as another Dead Space game. That is actually a very interesting idea. I didn't really think about that at all. And that is also a great way to introduce a new character to add into the current storyline, so I do support that. A logical choice for a non-Isaac protagonist would have to be Lexine Murdoch, or her child, since her story is left unfinished and it was hinted that something was special about her child, while Lexine herself appeared to have the ability to neutralize the hallucinogenic effects of the marker with a certain radius of herself in Dead Space Extraction. A lot of talks about Lexine. I might make a video about her just talking about her standalone and we can go from there. I picture a Dead Space 4 where Isaac and or Carver wake up in the EarthGov prison, or another asylum a few years after the events of Dead Space 3. And in the beginning, Isaac will be confused about what happened, and so the player won't know until later into the game if Awakening was a hallucination or not. I also think Awakening should have been a hallucination and never happened. However, the other Brethren Moons are still a looming threat, maybe even having Awakening have been some sort of premonition into the future in Isaac's mind, partly from the marker-induced dementia. Basically put that there to show Isaac it's not over and he needs to keep fighting them or something. something like that. Also have EarthGov be in a stronger position than they were in Dead Space 3. This is a crazy theory, but Greek myth told me of Gaia, the Earth Titan, who persuaded Kronos to kill his father. What if they went straight up ancient aliens and said Gaia was the first marker and Earth was its first brethren moon and has slowly and quietly influenced people of Earth to do terrible things? That is an interesting idea, but I don't know if Earth is necessarily a brethren moon because it doesn't really possess the same traits as a brethren moon from Dead Space 3, but cool theory. I really truly hope he plays Isaac in Dead Space 4. His story never concluded in Awakening, and I don't think they could satisfyingly end his story without him being the main protagonist. I also would like to see more of him, Ellie and Carver's friendship or relationship in Ellie and Isaac's term in Dead Space 4. I love your videos, man. Thanks, man. I aim to please. I also consider the possibility that Isaac and Carver witnessing the moon's attack on Earth was just a mere hallucination. A warning, this could be possible when you take note that the flashback orange effect that shows off at the end, but you mentioned that in the video right after I started typing this. Seriously, keep up these videos. I love Dead Space, all of it. Dead Space 1, 2, 3, Extraction, the books, the comics, the animated films. I love it all. Hashtag Dead Space 4. As for Dead Space 4, here is my suggestion. First, we see what happens on Earth through Ellie's eyes, and in this way we can know if she's still alive before Isaac and Carver get there. Then, given that one of the moons stands in their way, they crash land on it. After that, they could find the mine of the moon or the heart or something like this, destroy it, and finally make it to Earth and tell everyone how the moons can be defeated. Keep in mind, this is only a summary and only one of my suggestions. If you like, spread it. If not, no harm done. It is also a bit underdeveloped. They're going to use time traveling. Isaac is going to travel back when the moons are created. I kind of dig this idea, as long as they press the horror element strongly. No! Get out of here with that time travel bullshit. It's an excuse for lazy writing that makes past details confusing and irrelevant. You know, I know your intention was good, Mara 15, but I'm going to have to go with Wrath 176. Time travel storylines tend to be pretty crappy. I hope that in Dead Space 4 we get to see what happened to Lexine Weller. Got a lot of Lexine love on this video. I should definitely make a video about her. So we destroyed one of the moons, but there are 7 in total it seems. And I think there was 3 moons that found Earth, so where are the other 3 that are uncounted for? I think Isaac's story needs a proper wrap up before they go into Resident Evil 7 soft reboot territory. We need the moons to die. Kinda wish they never introduced the marker moons to begin with. Kinda muddles the lore a bit more. If the whole thing is grounded on Earth, then they could possibly up the stakes considerably. Maybe even have the marker moons and necromorphs win, making way for Dead Space 5. When I interviewed Gunner Wright, we did talk about how if they make a Dead Space 4, they're probably going to make a Dead Space 5 and a Dead Space 6, so they'll probably set up a new trilogy for this Dead Space continuation. So more than likely, if there's a Dead Space 4, there's probably going to be a 5 and 6. This comment replied to the previous comment I just read. What makes you think that Tal Voltana's moon is dead? Still looks pretty intact to me. I think it actually was confirmed that that moon was dead, but anyway. And it's not like the moon was even technically alive to begin with. What is not dead, my internal lie? The moons are likely extra dimensional beings that likely do not follow the same rules when it comes to life and death. Also, I think it's funny that you believe humanity must win, it must prevail. Dead Space takes a lot of its themes and ideas from Lovecraftian influences, and the best humanity can usually hope for in a Lovecraftian horror is to merely delay their inevitable extermination. If a Dead Space 4 were to come out, I think it should be about humanity's attempts at trying to delay complete eradication. That would be pretty bold for the writers to go in that direction, would not have humanity prevail in the end. Then again, they kind of already did that at the end of Awakening, so for them to redo it for Dead Space 4 wouldn't really make much sense unless they want to make it specific that yes, this is the end, we lost, and that was it, versus just leaving it up to ambiguous ending like it was in the Awakening DLC. First person survival horror, bam. I'm actually going to be making a video about this standalone topic where I talk about if Dead Space should be a first-person shooter game in the next game, so stay tuned for that. I'd love Dead Space 4 to finish the story of Isaac Clarke. It seems pretty clear that it will involve Earth somehow, or at the very least finding a way to wipe out the moons. And I really think the lore of the game's already provided an excellent way of combating the moons, planet crackers. It'd be pretty cool to see Isaac return to the Ishimura once again in a way, taking things back to where they began, while also using the ship to end it all. Well, the Ishimura got destroyed at the end of Titan Station unless it was not destroyed, and I actually made a video about this, guys, and I used this exact comment where I talked about how they could maybe fight the moons with planet crackers, so click on the screen somewhere to watch that video. I imagine Dead Space 4 to be more chaotic than Dead Space 3, of course, mainly because of a theory I came up with. Okay, so we know that the people live on the moon or something around Earth's orbit, therefore we can only say that Earth is overpopulated, thus also explaining why Isaac's ship from part 1 has to go into an illegal mining planet for supplies and finding the markers so we know the moons came or maybe not. So if the moons did come, then the markers effect will populate Earth really fast, including animals and other organisms, and hey, maybe machines. But anyway, almost all of humanity will become necromorphs just like the alien race from Dead Space 3. Therefore, if you land on Earth, almost nowhere will be safe, and we will bring back the suspense from Dead Space 1 and 2, also making you check every corner for a necromorph. But this will also lead the question, what will Isaac and the few remaining humans do for the survival of humanity? And that's what I think will happen in Dead Space 4. I do think in Dead Space 4 we are going to get new types of necromorphs, so if the moons infect the entire Earth population, or just the entire Earth in general, we will see all types of necromorphs underwater, in the sky, in the forests. That could lead to some very suspenseful gameplay, and I think that is going to happen, hopefully, in a Dead Space 4. Once again, thanks for the video, mate. Always nice to see people still like to talk about and hear about Dead Space series. I'm for almost all options, but a total reboot. Playing as a soldier on the ice planet and almost ending the necromorphs there, but ending up killed by the superior, that general, only to go to the same people hundreds of years later. I don't know how to describe, but that was an awesome feeling. And this would work wonders as a prologue chapter of some sorts, as you said. Playing as other characters like Ellie would still be really nice as long as we end up going back to Isaac and seeing how his story unfolds. An awakening being or not a dream could work either way for me, though I like it to be a dream. That gives more things to work on and still add mystery as who Isaac will manage to survive his jump. Thanks, man. All the best. I personally think Dead Space 4 should be completely new story, new characters, etc. It should have links with the lore of Dead Space like the Utology group, or mentions the USG Ishimura. Maybe you play as a unitologist, but then the group of miners find an organic-like alien that's different to the necromorphs. Okay, so if it left off where Awakening ended, then it should definitely have a prologue of Ellie arriving at Earth, or in the solar system, or maybe she's hidden in the Saturn rings or somewhere where the moon couldn't find her. And when Isaac and Carver get to Earth, and the scene from Awakening is about to end, Ellie could contact them and give them coordinates to Rendezvous Point. And it can be on another planet, or maybe a space station far outside of the core planets. And because of story plot, the space station was untouched by the moons. That's kind of lazy writing, but okay. So the people on the stations and the main characters find a way to stop the moons once and for all. I think they should use some references from Mass Effect 3 game. I think that might help Dead Space story development. But with the horror aspect, I don't know how they could go either way with that one. As long as we get to choose more than 3 colors, I'm happy. Maybe Awakening happens as it does, but the moons at Earth was the hallucination. Just like the discussions of Nicole being real at the end of the first Dead Space. I think it would be tough to make the game mostly take place on Earth because we would lose key game mechanics / environments like Zero-G and vacuum areas. But how about space stations that would orbit Earth? Earth would be extremely overpopulated, so other colonies would need to build to house our entire species. The colony on Earth's moon could be one of a few. That's a great point regarding Dead Space 4's location. A lot of us keep wanting it to be set on Earth the entire time, but where else would the zero gravity take place? So I think orbiting around Earth to different space stations would probably be a better idea, along with going down to Earth. Isaac is crucial to the Dead Space narrative, but he does not have to be the playable character. I feel like he has become too much of an action hero. Maybe a new character could be saved by Isaac and given a plasma cutter with the device to cut off their limbs. Isaac could be in some kind of command role, issuing story objectives and advice to other characters once did via the comlink. It would be the best of both worlds. He's still integral to the story, but we could also get to play as a new character who is helplessly fighting for their survival. And by the way, the Awakening DLC was the best part of Dead Space 3. Awakening was classic Dead Space for fans for the entire series. I get the feeling those who didn't like it wouldn't like Dead Space 1 or 2. They are the action shooter demographic that EA was trying to market this game that didn't work. All that is left are the true Dead Space and survival horror fans. Make a final chapter for us, the loyal fans. I only want Dead Space 4 if EA and Visceral Games can deliver a survival horror game worthy of the title of Dead Space. I would rather not have it than a game with no passion just to exploit us. I do think that Awakening was also the best part of Dead Space 3. It seemed like Visceral Games still knew how to make a Dead Space game, and it really was just EA's involvement that caused 3 to be so different from 1 and 2. I know I've mentioned this a few times, but I think it might be an interesting idea to play as Ellie in the 4th installment. Put Isaac aside for now until later parts of the chapter, because I would love to see the story come full circle. What I would love to see is Lexine, Dead Space Extraction, and Dead Space 2 several DLC help Ellie out in the game as the moons invade Earth. There are a few things I didn't like in Dead Space 3. A few of them were too much action, the love triangle which was too silly, I agree. It was a bit too much like Gears of War and it was too long, but there were some okay moments, including the crash landing on Tau Voltanis and Carver's hallucinations. What might happen in Dead Space 3 is Ellie will have sorts of hallucinations in the game from the effects of the marker. What would be neat is to bring some of the characters back, hallucinations from the first 3, including the first time who was originally going to be in the 3rd game. Shadow Isaac. Ooh, I like that. Now, Shadow Isaac is an egotistical jerk, sort of like the ex-boyfriend from Hell, and he taunts her of what she had done to him and torments her, sort of like what Nicole did to Isaac in Dead Space 2. That's a very cool idea, man. It would be neat to bring Hammond, Kendra, Diana, Nicole, Terrence, and Norton back in hallucination form in the last few chapters of the game, because it would be neat to see some of the characters back that we all know and love. That's an awesome idea as well. They should also take inspirations from games like BIOSHOCK franchise, Alien Isolation, Prey, The Last of Us, and the TV miniseries Stephen King's It, along with the movies Alien, Blade Runner, and Event Horizon. We need a 4th installment to be back in the roots of the first 2 Dead Space games. I mean, I wouldn't mind playing as Ellie. I know my idea is long and too silly, but what do you think? I think that is so far the best comment I have read. Dead Space 4 should begin where Awakening begun. The chapters of Awakening spell out RIP. But as Isaac says himself, I don't even know what death means anymore. But if it does take place on Earth, there will only be a few more colonies. After the original black marker was dug up after ravaging the planet, they took it to the stars to mining. It would make sense. The black marker's current status is unknown due to ultimate sinking and destroying of the facility where it was contained. However, according to one of the Scarp's artifacts found in Dead Space 3, it is implied that the Sovrian colonies managed to excavate it from the facility ruins and use it for their own experimentation, eventually leading to their own red marker copies such as Marker 3A found on Aegis 7. So taking the fight to Earth will make the most sense because the moon, since the black marker was closed, I believe with it being unshielded, I radiated the self-replacing signal and alerted the moons to converge and adversely affect the colonists. The Earth will be the final destination to stop in the markers for good and to end the story. I'm excited to see what lies within the Brethren Moons. I hope it's a psychological survival horror game within its flashbacks to different parts of the story, or when they are on the moons, they live their own personal hell and must stop the moon so they can get out alive. Either or, this game needs to have great production, non-mandatory co-op, and fluid storytelling. I can only replay the Dead Space trilogy so many times, EA. Given the severity of Earth and the current amount of Brethren Moons, it wouldn't make sense that Isaac fights on Earth with all the chaos presented. A planet cracker probably wouldn't wound a moon, but the odds against so many, it wouldn't be viable. The unused plot about Isaac's father could be used as a fulcrum point. Isaac either finds or receives information on the whereabouts of his father, who is known for designing ships. His fate is unknown at this point, implying Earth government already knew about the Brethren Moons scheduled somewhere in space, creating these ships as a means to fight the moons. At some point, Isaac returns back to Earth with a or several ships equipped with gravity tethers stronger than any commercial ones represented available in-game. Ellie finds information about Tau Voltanis. She could at other abandoned bases and terminals do about the same thing on Earth if the moons didn't chase her. I don't know, I'm sure writers could make an excuse. This thing is that if Dead Space 4 takes place right after Awakening on Earth, it will almost be impossible to find a way to save the entire planet from the moons and the necromorphs. I say we should consider the ending of Awakening not as canon and make the plot about something else, or have us play as a different character in another context. I've been saying they could go 2 more. Dead Space 4, Earth is under siege, so a new playable character, maybe with a group you have to get supplies or something, you know, or even a new element to keep it fresh and really bring back the feel of 1 and 2. The shit yourself for going down the dark hallways feeling, because something could come from anywhere and it's always random, and at the end bring Isaac and Carver back into the fold. Dead Space 5, full-on horror assault with Isaac, Carver, and the new guys, and make it bigger and badder than ever, with equal parts terror that blow 1 and 2 out of the water, with the action from 3 and end the Necromorph forever, or leave it open, like Mass Effect did for Andromeda, for more stories later on down the road. Well, we all know what happened with Mass Effect Andromeda, so let's not go too close to that game. Actually, let's not go close to that game at all. What they should do is have the new set of games take place a few months or years after Awakening, and you have to play as a new hero, showing humanity is on the brink of extinction from the moons and the humans who worship them, as well as the Necromorphs. And maybe have your character searching for Isaac and Carver, believing that they hold the key to winning, or even have them like your character's mentor. Also, not that this needs to be part of the game, but maybe have a little character customization. That way it can be like us, the player trapped in space trying to survive. Okay, so kind of like a Noble 6 customization situation from Halo Reach, where your Spartan appears differently in every cutscene. I don't know if they would want to make your character different in every cutscene, but if they went that extra mile, I'd definitely appreciate that. And that is it, guys. This was probably the longest Dead Space video I have done. I'd spent several hours on this, so please, if you enjoyed anything in this video, please remember to drop a like on the video. Feel free to comment on what you think Dead Space 4 will be like after Dead Space Awakening, or if you want Dead Space Awakening to be a hallucination and not real, what happens after Dead Space 3? Let me know in the comments below. My name is James of JKP Rising. Subscribe for some more Dead Space videos here on JKP Rising. I will be actively covering Dead Space as well as Dead Space 4. As mentioned early on in the video, I also cover Metroid, Deus Ex, BioShock, and Halo. The next video I upload after this will be my E3 predictions for 2017. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.